Today we are going to build this flashcards project. It is a very simple project, but I find it exciting because I have finally learned how to do the card flip animation using CSS. And it was in a project that I did, I think 2 years or 3 years ago. It was a countdown timer where one of the comments was asking me, or maybe I mentioned it in the video, where I said that I did not know how to do the card flip animation. Well, I have finally learned how to do it. So this is a flashcards project. It is meant to help you study. So if you're still in school, it is going to be useful to you, or I hope it is going to be useful. So you are able to create flashcards according to a category. You can place the question and then the answer. And then once you create a flashcard, it appears here, and then you can scroll through all the flashcards that you have. And then when you click on a card here, it flips to show you the answer so that you can evaluate yourself whether you got it correct or incorrect. And depending on what you mark inside here, it is also going to show up in the statistics, as you can see right there. So it's a very simple project. It is going to take some time to build. And I do want to mention that I am feeling a bit under the weather because my tonsils are swollen. So it's a bit of a struggle to record, but I hope you enjoy the video. Let's begin. So to begin with this application, I'm going to use Z as my code editor today. You can go ahead and download it and install it if you want to follow along with the code editor, or you can go ahead and use whatever code editor that you want. Most of the time in my videos, I usually use VS Code or VS Code. So this is an instance of Z that is open up, and you can see that I am on my desktop. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new Vite application. So pnpm create Vite at latest, and then enter. And for our project name, I'm going to call this flashcards-app. And then we're going to use React, and then React with the Speedy Web Compiler. So the third option, and sorry, it's JavaScript, not React, JavaScript with the Speedy Web Compiler. And for this option, we're going to say no. And we're going to say no for this one as well. And then we're simply going to say cd into flashcards-app, and then z dot, which is going to open up another instance of Z into this folder. And then I'm going to close that other instance. Now I do apologize if I'm speaking a bit slowly because my tonsils are swollen, but let's go ahead and begin to set up our application. So first things first, we need to go ahead and install Tailwind CSS. So npm install Tailwind CSS, and then we also need to install at Tailwind CSS /feet, and then we need to install Lucid React, which we're going to use as our icon library. So as these are installing, let's go ahead and jump into Google Fonts so that we can get the font that we're going to use in this project. So fonts.google.com. And then inside here, we're simply going to search for Geist. And we don't want the mono, so we want this first one, so Geist. And then just ensure that when you click on Get Font, that it is the only one that is selected. You can see that I selected another one that is called Poppins. So I want to remove this so that I only select this one. So Get Embed Code. And then we're going to use the one where we link it in our HTML, so copy code. And then we're simply going to link it above the title like so. And then we're going to change our title here to just say flashcards. We can go ahead and save that. And then our application should be ready to run so that we can say pnpm dev. And this is going to open up our application on localhost 5173. So if you go ahead and open up localhost 5173, then we should see this, which is the default React and Vite application. So I'm going to place this to the right. We can close down our Google Fonts and then place this to the left. And then we can close down our terminal as well using Ctrl-J to toggle it. And then we can close the index.html. And then now let's jump into our source folder. We can delete the assets, we don't need it. We can also delete the app.css file, so delete. And then inside the main.jsx, we are not changing anything inside here, but then inside the index.css, we need to do a few things. We are going to remove all the default styles that are inside here because we need to say at import, and then inside double quotes, Tailwind CSS. So that Tailwind CSS is actually going to work, and you can see that it resets a couple of things. And then we're also going to target our universal selector and set the font family, font-family into Geist, with a fallback of sans serif, just like that. And you can see that the font applies. Now this file is going to have some other styles, not a lot, about 24 lines, I think, if I remember correctly. But for now, this is going to suffice because I want us to go ahead and build out our application. So if we jump into the app.jsx, we're going to select everything and remove it. And then we're going to begin with our imports that we're going to need. So we first want to import useState and useEffect. We're also going to import the plus icon from Lucid React, as well as the bar chart 3 icon. We're going to import a component that we're going to create called flashcard, what they call it? It was flashcard deck from ./components. So we're going to create this file and then flashcard deck, just ensuring that the capitalizations are correct. And then let me close down the sidebar using Control B. And then I'm going to import, let me copy this down because it's going to be easier. This second one is going to import the flashcard form. And this is coming from flashcard form, just like that. And then this third one is going to be the stats component. So import stats component like so. And then we're also going to import some functions from our utils folder that we're going to create. So ./utils/storage. So that is our file. Storage.js is going to be the name of our file. And we're going to import load flashcards. And we're also going to import save flashcards. So this is coming from our utils folder. Now, in order that our application doesn't break immediately, let's go ahead and create these files. So inside the source folder, we're going to create a new file called components, and then /flashcard deck.jsx, and that is going to create the folder and then the file. And then inside Z, you can just say RFC, and then you can go ahead and import that. And that is the wrong one. I don't want that one. I want to say RF. Is it RFCE? There you go. That it imports it in one line, and then I can change this into flashcard deck. And then just copy this and paste it here, save it. Then we can copy the entire thing, create a new component called flashcard form.jsx, paste that in, and then change this into flashcard form. And then we need to create a third one called .jsx, because we have been using JSX all along. And then just highlight this and then say stats. Oh, and the way I'm highlighting them is just highlight this one and then Control D to highlight the next one that matches. So it's easier to just edit it like that to add multiple cursors. And then we need to create this file. So inside the source folder, create a new file called utils, then /storage.js, like so. Now not JSX, because this file is not going to have any JSX. So we are simply going to create the outlines of the functions that we need, and then later we're going to create the actual functions. So we're going to go ahead and say export const load flashcards. This is going to be an arrow function just like that. And for now, like I said, it's going to be empty. Let's copy this down and then have a space. The second one is called save flashcards. Save that. And now we can save our application and it should not break. Oh, we're not going to see anything on the screen because we don't have a return. So let's continue building this out. So export default function app, and then let's just return a div. Okay, I did too much. So let's return a div that says app, save that, and now we can see app on the screen. So first of all, we need to set up our state values. So const flashcards, this should be small c, and set flashcards. This is equal to useState, and useState by default now we're going to be calling the function called load flashcards, because load flashcards is going to be accessing local storage, so that when you create a card, it is going to be saved into local storage. Just take note of the brackets right here, and I'm calling the function as well. And then the next function, or the next state value that we're going to need is called current view, and set current view, and this is going to be equal to useState. And by default, what we're going to be viewing is the deck. Now, this state value is what we're going to be using to toggle between the components that are showing on the screen. So if you want to, for example, show the form so that you can create a new flashcard, then we're going to toggle this to show form and then the corresponding component. And then if you want to see the stats, we're going to toggle this to say stats as well. And then you're going to be able to see the corresponding component as well. Our third function here is called editing card, and set editing card. And of course, you can tell that this one is going to be for our edit state values. And then we're going to have a use effect here. And the use effect is going to be calling the save flashcards function, which is coming from right here. and the use effect is going to have a dependency array of the flashcards. So flashcards, so that every time that we have a new flashcard or we delete it or we update it, then it is going to save it as well so that you can access the current data from local storage. Now we're going to have a bunch of functions inside here, which I'm not going to create right away. I'm just going to create an outline for them because I want us to build the UI. So the first function here is called add flashcard. And this is going to take in the card data as an argument. And then I'm going to open this up and then leave it as empty. The next one is called update flashcard. This is also going to take in the card data. Open that up, leave it as empty. The third one is called, why am I adding so many spaces? Delete flashcard. This one is going to take in the ID so that we can delete the flashcard by its ID. And then const update card stats. This is going to take in the ID and the is correct. And then open that up and then leave it as empty. And then const start editing. Start editing. This is going to take in the card. Really? And then const cancel editing. This is also going to take in, oh sorry, this doesn't take in any argument, but you can leave it as empty just like that. Now let's begin to build out our return. So we're going to return a div here with a class name of min height screen and bg slate 50. And then inside here, we're going to return the header component with a class name of bg white and then shadow sm and then border bottom and border gray 200. Inside the header, we're going to have a div with a class name of max width 6xl mx auto and then padding on the x of 4. And then inside this div, we're going to have another div with a class name of flex and justify between and items center and then height 16. And then inside this, we're going to have another div with a class name of flex and items center and then space on the x of 3. And then finally, we're going to have an h1 with a class name of text 2xl and then font bold and text amber 950. And you know what? I think we don't need this div because initially I had an icon inside here, but I removed it. So it should be safe to remove the class names on this div. So we're going to have an h1 here that just says flashcards. So if you say that, then the h1 appears right there. Oh, Tailwind is not applying. Add import Tailwind CSS. Is that not how you do it? Oh, I know why it's not applying. It's because we have not added it in Vite. So here we need to import Tailwind CSS from @Tailwind CSS /Vite and then call it right here. So Tailwind CSS like so. So if you save that, it is going to restart because we have made a change in the Vite config. And then once it restarts, you can see right there that we now have our h1. Now below the h1 and then below this div, we're going to have a nav element with a class name of flex and items center and then space on the x of 4. And then inside the nav, we're going to have a button, and this button is going to say study, but this button is going to have an on click, which is going to be calling the inline function here called set current view, which is how we are changing our views. And we want to set this view into the deck, which it is by default. This is current with a T. And then it's going to have some class names here, which are dynamic. So open up your curly brackets and then backticks. So you're going to say padding on the x of 4, padding on the y of 2, rounded large, font medium, font medium, and then transition colors, and then $ and curly bracket. You want to check if the current view is triple equal to deck. And if that is true, then the button is going to have bg-amber 100 and then text amber 700. And then otherwise, we're going to apply text gray 600. And then on hover, we're going to say text gray 900. And then on hover, we're going to say bg gray 100. And you know what, because I'm using gray here, let me also change this to gray. And that is purposeful because Slate is a bit harder for me to type. I have no idea why. But if you save that, then our first button is going to appear there. And then next, we're going to go ahead and copy this button. We're going to paste it down. But now this second one, the on click is going to go into the stats. And then the class names should remain the same all the way through. But then this is now checking for the current view being equal to stats. So that if you save that, that now we have this, or the text as well should change. This is now going to show bar chart 3 icon. So the bar chart 3, which we imported, is going to have a class name of size-4, and then close it out. And then below this, we're going to have a span that says stats. So if you save that, then we have that applying. And I've just realized that we should apply a class of flex and item.center here, and then give it, let's say, gap 2. And then we're going to have a third button, so we can copy this, paste it here. Now the on click for this is going to open up curly brackets first of all, and then we're going to say set editing card into null. Really? And then we're going to say set current view into form, just like that. And then of course this is going to check whether the current view is triple equal to the form. And all other class names should remain the same, I hope. And then this is now going to show the plus icon. So plus icon, which we also imported. This is going to have a class name of size-4, and then the span is going to say new card. Save that, and we have that right there. So if we maximize this, I would want this to be a different color. So change this into 600, and then save that. Let's see how it looks. Oh, you know what? It's because we don't need this part right here. We don't need it. But then we need to apply bg amber-600. Save that. Okay. And then the text is now going to say white. And then on hover, we're going to say bg-amber-700, and then transition-colors. Oh, we already have transition colors there. Fantastic. Now what you saw right there is not an extension that I have installed, but it is something that Z already has, where I think it detects tailing CSS classes so that you don't have these conflicts. And I hope I'm correct. Either it is that or it is something in our ESLint config. But you can see that now it looks quite nice. So when you're in study, we are seeing study. When we move to stats, we should see stats, and then new card, we should see the form. So that is our header complete. And now we're going to go below the header right here. We're going to create the main element with a class name of maxwidth-6xl, and then mx-auto, padding on the x of 4, and then margin top of 6. And then inside the main element, we want to check if the current view is triple equal to deck. And only when that is true, that's when we want to show the flashcard deck, flashcard deck component. Oh my God, what am I typing? So this one is going to take in some props. So it's going to take in the flashcard prop, which is going to be equal to the flashcard. Oh, this should be flashcards because we call it flashcards. It is also going to take in the on delete prop, which we're going to be calling the delete flashcard, not handle delete like I wanted to type. And then on edit is going to call the start editing. And then on update stats is going to be calling update stats, or rather update card stats, as you can see. And then next, we want to check if the current view is triple equal to the form. And only when that is true, that's when we want to go ahead and have the flashcard form. Close it out. The flashcard form is going to have an on submit prop here, which is going to be checking if editing card is true. And if that is true, then you want to call the function here, or you want to pass the function called update flashcard. And otherwise, we're going to call add flashcard, like so. And then on cancel, we're going to be calling the cancel editing. And then the initial data that you're going to pass in is going to be equal to the editing card. And then is editing is going to be equal to not editing card. Now, why is that? Because the double negation here is going to turn it into a boolean, so true or false. And then finally, we want to check if the current view is triple equal to stats, and if that is true, then you want to have the stats component, which is going to pass in the flashcards like so. So flashcards, and then close it out just like that. So you can save that, and now you can see that we can see our flashcard deck. When I click on stats, we see stats, and new card, we see the flashcard form. So before we jump out of this file, we actually need to create these functions so that we can test them out when we are previewing our application. So let's go ahead and start with the add flashcard function. So inside here, we're going to say const new card is equal to, and then open up an object. I'm going to pass in an ID, and in this case, I'm going to use just date.now because that should be unique enough. However, this is not recommended because you can actually execute this function many times within a second. And that means that the cards that you create within that second are going to have the same ID. So you probably don't want to do this. So you can use something else like UUID. But in this case, we are not going to be creating cards that fast. So this will suffice. And then we're going to pass in the card data. So spread out the card data, which is coming from here. Because when we're calling this function, we're going to pass in an argument, which is going to act as the card data right here. So we are spreading it. And then we're going to pass in the created art, where we can say new date, open this up, and then .to ISO string. So, and then the correct count is going to be 0. The incorrect count is also going to be 0. And the last reviewed is going to say null. And then below this, we're going to say set flashcards. And this is going to first of all check it for the previous value. And then we're going to go ahead and say attach the previous values and then add in the new card. So, and then I'm going to say set current view back into deck. So when you add a flashcard, it's going to throw you back into the flashcard deck right there. And then for the update flashcard, this also takes in the card data, and I'm going to say set flashcards, and then open this up. We want to check for the previous value, and then we're going to say prev.map, and then for every card that we get back, we're going to open this up, and then we're going to say card.id is triple equal to editing card.id. If that is true, then we're going to open up an object here and spread in all the details about the card, and then spread in all the details about the card data as well. And otherwise, we're simply going to return the card that we are mapping over, the object that we get back. Now, once we do that, then we're going to say set editing card into null, and then we're going to say set current view back into deck. So once we finish editing, then throw us back into this view, just like in the add card. And then delete card takes in the ID. And for this one, I'm simply going to say set flashcards, open this up, check for the previous value, and then I'm going to say prev.filter, and then for every card that we get back, then return the card.id, which is not equal to the ID that we're passing in as an argument, and that is going to remove the flashcard. And then update card stats, this is going to be a bit longer, so we're going to say set flashcards, check for the previous value. Then I'm going to say prev.map, and I think let me make this full screen. I think it's going to be better. Prev.map, and then for every card that we get back, then we're going to say card.id is triple equal to ID is true. Then we're going to open up an object, and we're going to open up like so. And then if it is not true, so right here, we're going to return the card. So I've done that because this part is a bit long. So we're going to say right here that spread in all the details about the card, and then the correct count, we are going to pass in is correct, and we want to check if that is true. Then we're going to say card.correct count plus 1, meaning add the number of correct times that I've got it plus 1. Otherwise, we're going to say card.correct count, just like that. And then for the incorrect count, we're going to say not is correct, because that means that it is not correct. So if that is true, then card.incorrect count plus 1, otherwise card.incorrect count. So what am I doing? This should say full colon. So card.incorrect count. just like that. And then the last reviewed is going to say new date dot to ISO string, just like that. And then for start editing is going to be as follows. We're going to say set editing card into the card, and then set current view into the form. And then for the cancel editing, we're going to say set editing card into null, and then set current view into deck, just like that. So we can save that, and our functionality is technically working, but we just need to build out the components. So let's go ahead and jump into the flashcard deck. So Control P and then just search for flashcard deck, and you can open it quite quickly, as you can see. So inside flashcard deck, we're going to go ahead and import use state React. We're also going to import some icons here. So chevron left, which is right here. We're also going to import chevron right, and then we need to import rotate ccw. Okay, we need the edit to, the trash to, and the book open as well. And then we need to import a component called flashcard from /flashcard. And let's go ahead and create this. So inside components, create a new file called flashcard.jsx. Inside here, you can say rfce, and then just say flashcard, and then for the text, flashcard. Save that, and then we can continue building this out. So remember, flashcard deck takes in some props, so we're going to destructure them. So it takes in the flashcards, the on delete, the on edit, and the on update status as well. And it's not status, it's stats. And then inside here, we're going to have some state values. So const current index, so that you can keep track of what flashcard we're doing. And then set current index. This is going to be equal to use state. By default, it is going to be 0 because arrays are 0 based. And then const show answer, and set show answer is going to be a boolean. So use state by default, it is going to be false. And then if there are no flashcards, so if flashcards dot length is triple equal to 0, if that is true, then we're going to go ahead and return, and we are returning a div with a class name of text-center, and then padding of the y of 16. And then inside this div, we're going to return the book open, which is going to have a class name of size-24, text gray-300, mx auto, and then margin on the bottom of 6. Close this out. And then we're going to have an h2 with a class name of text-2xl, font-semi-bold, text gray-700, and then margin on the bottom of 2. And then inside the h2, we're going to say no flashcards yet. Below the h2, we're going to have a paragraph with a class name of text gray-800, then margin bottom of 6, and this should be 500. That is a bit lighter. And then the paragraph is going to say create your first flashcard to start studying. Now, if you save that, we should be able to see, okay, it's broken. Let's check out why it's broken. Reading at flashcards. So flashcards, okay. I hope I just passed it in correctly. So flashcards is equal to flashcards. Okay. So it seems that because this is still null, so that should not be null. It should be, oh, wait a minute. It's coming from load flashcards. So in this function, that's why we're going to pass in, or that we're going to pass in the check for if there are no flashcards, then return an empty array. So probably we should do this first, but since we already began the flashcard deck, let's just continue with it. So below our if statement here, we're going to say const current card is equal to flashcards. So get all the flashcards, and then pass in the current index, which once again is going to be a number because arrays are 0 based. So if you have like 10 of them and the current index that you're on is index number 5, then we're going to show the 6th flashcard, as you can see right there. So let's create the function that we're going to need for this component. So const next card is going to be equal to an arrow function like so. And these functions are easy, that's why I'm just opening to create them right away. So if the current index is less than the flashcard, come on, flashcards.length -1, meaning it's the last one, meaning we have not yet reached the last one, then we're going to say set current index into the current index +1, so increment it by 1, and then set show answer into false so that you don't show the answer of the next flashcard. And then the next function that we need to create is the previous card. So const prev card going to be an arrow function, and we're going to say if the current index is greater than 0, then we're going to say set current index into current index -1, meaning go to the last card, and then set show answer into false, meaning go back to the previous card. So go back a card -1, and then we're going to say set show answer into false once again, so that you don't show the answer of the previous card that you're going to. And then const handle answer, this is going to be taking the is correct as an argument, like so. And we're going to say on update stats, and we're going to pass in the current card.id and then the is correct as well, because if you remember, the updates stats function right here takes in the, where is it, takes in the ID and then the is correct. So that is what we're passing in inside here. So the ID and then is correct. Then once we do that, then we're going to say set timeout, and the set timeout here is going to be calling the next card function like so, after every 500 milliseconds or 0.5 seconds. So basically saying that once we have an answer and the answer is correct, or even if it's wrong, and we still have some other cards in the flashcards, then we're going to call the next card function, which I've created above, after half a second has passed, so that you can automatically move to the next card. Now the next function and the last function that we need is called reset card, and this is going to be an arrow function, and we're simply going to say set show answer into false. Now once we do that, we can begin to have our return. So we're going to turn a div here with a class name of maxwidth-2xl mx-auto, and then inside this we're going to go ahead and show, oops, what have I done? Really? What am I doing? What is happening? Close it. Okay. So inside here we're going to turn a div with a class name of margin bottom of 8, and then inside this we're going to turn another div with a class name of flex and items-center, and then justify-between and margin on the bottom of 2. Inside this div we're going to have a span with a class name of text-sm and then text gray-800, and this should say 600 because it's lighter. And then inside the span we're going to say card, and then open this up, curly brackets, current index +1 of, and then pass in the flashcards.length. So it's going to say card 5 of 10, so something like that. Now why is it current index +1? Because you don't want to show card 0, because arrays are 0 based. So you always want to show like a valid number, a kind of valid number, even though I know that 0 is also a valid number. Now below this span we're going to have another span in the class name of text-sm text gray-600, and then this is going to be calling math.round, and then open up and then pass in the current index +1, and then outside of one bracket /, and that is going to be the divide value, flashcards.length, and then outside of this other one times 100, and then outside of this % complete. Now I think it is going to be better if we are able to see something on the screen, so we need to create the functions from our storage. So let's go ahead and create these functions so that we are able to preview what we are doing on the screen. So for the load flashbacks, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have a try catch block inside here, so try catch, and the catch we're going to pass in the error, and then open this up, and we're going to say console.error I'm going to say error loading flashcards, then pass in the error like so, and then simply return an empty array, as you can see, so that in case there's an error, then we're going to see nothing on the screen, but we're going to see this part right here, meaning the length is equal to 0. And then for the try block, we're going to say const stored is equal to local storage dot get item, and we're going to be saving this item as storage underscore key. Now let's go ahead and create it. It is very simple. Let's simply going to say const storage underscore key is equal to, and we're going to pass in the key that we want to store it in local storage. So in this case, I'm going to call it flashcard underscore cards, and this is what I used when I was building out the project, so it might still get the items that I stored in local storage for that, but we're going to go ahead and find out in a moment. Now once we do that, then we want to say return the stored values from local storage, and if that is true, then we want to say JSON.pass, and then pass in the stored, type it, and if none exists, then return an empty array just like that. So if we save that, then you can see that I have card 1 of 2, and that is because, once again, I already created the cards in local storage and I've used the same local storage key. So for you, you're not going to be able to see this, but this is also going to help me out because we're going to be able to see what we're building in the project. So let's create this second function called flashcards, or they're called save flashcards, and it's going to take in the flashcards as an argument. And then inside you're going to have another try catch block, so try catch, and then we're going to pass in the error here, and we're going to say console.error, and we're simply going to say error saving flashcards, then pass in the error, and then we don't need to return anything, but we're simply going to say for the try local storage dot set item, and we're setting the item called storage key, and we want to say JSON.stringify, and then pass in the flashcards. So that's how we're going to save it in local storage. And then we're going to need a third function here. So let's just create it right away because we don't want to jump back into this file. So this one is called clear all data. This is going to be an arrow function with no arguments, and it's going to have a try catch block once again. So for the catch, we're going to pass in the error, and we're simply going to say console.error, error clearing the data, then pass in the error like so. And then for the try, we're going to say local storage dot remove item, and we want to remove the storage key. So that is how we're going to clear all the flashcards. So with that, I think we can now save our storage.js, and then we can continue building out our flashcard deck. So you can see right here that the parts that we're creating, so card 1 of 2 is right here, and then the percentage complete is right here because I answered 1 out of 2 questions. So you can see that it is working as we expect it to work. So below the span and then below this first div, we're going to turn another div with the class name of width-full and bg gray-200, and then rounded-full, and then height-2, and this is going to be a progress bar. So we're going to create a self-closing div, and this div is going to have a class name of bg-amber-600, and then height-2, so that it fits into this as well. So height-2, and then rounded-full, transition-all with a duration of 300. And then in order for this to work, we're going to have in a style object here, and the style object, we're going to pass in the width, which is going to be dynamic, so backticks and then $ curly bracket. We want to check if the current index, or 2 parentheses, so current index plus 1, divide this by the flashcards dot length, and then multiply this by 100, and then have the percentage sign inside here. So basically this is going to evaluate into a certain value and then have the percentage sign after it, which is going to give it the width of the progress bar. And you can see that the logic right here is the same as what we have done on top. So basically the same thing, only that this time instead of this returning a number, it's going to return a percentage, which is then going to be substituted into actual CSS. So if you save that, the progress bar is going to be showing 50% complete. So if I add another card, then it's going to show it should be 3 cards should be 33% complete, and 4 cards 25%, and so on and so forth. So now we're going to go below the self-closing div and then below these 2 divs. And then now we also want to go ahead and build out our card display. So we're going to have a div with a class name of relative. Really? Inside this div, we're going to show the flashcard component. This is going to take in the card as the current card. What am I even saying? Current card. It's going to take in show answer as show answer. And then on flip is going to be calling an inline function here that says set show answer into the opposite of show answer. Close this out. Now below this, we want to have some actions below the card. So if I were to save this, then you can see flashcard right there. But right below it, we want to be able to edit and delete and reset it. So we're going to create a div here with a class name of flex, and then items as center, and then justify dash between, and then margin top of 6. Inside this, we're going to have another div with a class name of flex, and then space on the x of 2. Inside this, we're going to have a button. This button is going to have an on click, which is going to be calling the on edit. So on edit, and then passing the current card. And then the class name for this is going to say padding all round of 2, text gray dash 600. And then on hover, text amber dash 600. And then on hover, bg amber dash 50. Rounded dash large, and then transition dash colors. Close this out. And for this button, I'm going to give it a title so that when you hover over it, it's going to show you a tooltip, and the title is going to say edit card. Now inside the button, we're going to show the edit to icon, which is going to have a class name of size dash 5, and then close this out. And that should be the entire button. We don't have any text inside it, but then you can copy this button, copy, and then 1. Now the on click here is going to be calling the on delete, and the on delete is going to take in the current card.id because we want to be able to delete the cards by its ID. And then the title is now going to say delete card. And I think the class names should remain the same, only that now amber should now be changed into red. And what I've done there, like I explained beforehand, is just highlight this and then Control D to highlight the next one, and then you can change the text. Now we're going to copy this button once more, paste it down one more time, and I should also change this icon here to say trash 2 because that is the delete icon. Now this third button is going to be calling the reset card, so it's not an inline function. So reset card. The class names can remain the same, except that the red now here is going to say gray, and and this is going to say gray 800, and then on hover bg gray 100, and then the title here is going to say reset card, and the icon is going to say rotate ccw, and that should be okay. So if we save that, then those are our 3 icons, which should be functional, I hope, because we can't really test it out before we build the rest of the application, because this should take us into this page. I'm calling it page, but it's technically a view. Delete should delete it completely. So delete should actually work, but I don't want to delete the card just yet. And then reset should now just reset it. Now, once we have this, we also want to show incorrect and correct buttons somewhere here. So let's go ahead and do that. So below the button and then below the div, we want to check if show answer is true, and only when it is true, that's when we want to have a div with a class name of flex, and then space on the x of 3. Really. So div class name flex space x3, close it out. And then inside this div, we're going to have a button, and you know what, I think we can safely copy this. So copy, paste it here. We don't need the title now, but the on click for this one is going to be an inline function calling handle answer, and then I'm going to pass in false. So set it into false. The class name here is now going to say padding on the x of 6, padding on the y of 2. And let me just type this out because they are different classes. So bg-red-500 with an opacity of 30, and then text red-500 rounded -large, and then on hover we're going to say text -white, and then on hover bg red-600, then transition -colors and font -medium. And then the text inside here is now not showing an icon, simply saying incorrect. And then we're going to copy this button, paste it down. This one is now going to say handle answer to true. The class names are going to remain the same, except everywhere where there's red, we're going to say green. So highlight this first one, then Control D, Control D to highlight the 3 of them, and then change this into green so that you don't need to change every other color. And then the text here is going to say correct. So if you save that, then we're going to have something on the flashcard deck. So we can't see this part just yet, this part that they've just created, because it is dependent on part of the flashcard. Because if you remember, we are rendering the flashcard, and then we will be able to flip it by toggling this. So when we toggle it, that's when we're going to be able to see the 2 buttons for correct and incorrect that we've just created. Now there's still a part that you need to do. So we're going to go below these 2 divs, and we're going to have some navigation, so our next and previous buttons. So we're going to create a div with a class name of flex and items-center and justify-between, and then margin on the top of 8, justify between, and margin top of 8. Inside this div, we're going to have a button. The on click for this button is going to be calling the prev card, and then the disable status, so it's going to be disabled if the current index is triple equal to 0, meaning if we're on the first card. And then the class names for this, it's going to have quite a few. So flex items-center space on the x of 2, padding on the x of 4, padding on the y of 2, bg white border gray-300 and rounded-large, and then on hover we're going to say bg gray-50, and then for the disabled state we're going to say cursor-not allowed, and then transition-colors. Close that out. Inside the button we're going to show the chevron left icon with a class name of size-5, and then below this we're going to have a span that says previous. Now we're going to copy this button, paste it down. Now this next button is going to say next, and the on click is going to be calling the next card. The disabled state is going to be checking if the current index is triple equal to the flashcards.length -1, meaning if we are on the last flashcard, then we're going to disable the next button. Now the text here, or rather the icon, is going to be showing the chevron right, and then in between these 2 buttons we're going to have a span with a class name of text gray-600 and font-medium, and then inside this we're going to show the current index, current index +1, and then / flashcards.length. So save that, and we have that right there. So we're on flashcard number 1 out of 2. We have our previous and next buttons. So the next component that we need to create is called flashcard. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So Control P and then search for flashcard, just like that. So our flashcard component is going to be relatively simple. So what we just need to do is import useState from React, and then flashcard also takes in some props. So we need to destructure the card, the show answer, as well as the on flip. And then inside here we're going to go ahead and say const is flipping and set is flipping. This is equal to useState. By default it is going to be false. And then we're going to have a function here called handle flip. So const handle flip. This is going to be an arrow function. We're going to say set is flipping into true. and then set timeout. Open this up. We're going to call the onFlip function, which we are passing in as a prop, remember, in the previous file. And then we're going to say set is flipping into false. And you want to flip this by 150 milliseconds. Now, once you have that, then you can begin to have a return. So you're going to run a div with a class name of relative, and then width dash full, height dash 80, and then perspective dash 1000. I don't think Tailwind has that class. 1000. Let me try to use 1200. I used 1000 because I created a custom class for it, but let me try 1200 to see how it looks. I hope I don't forget if it messes up. Now we're going to have a div here. This div is going to have some dynamic class names, so curly brackets and then backticks. We're going to say relative, and then size dash full, so width and height of full, cursor dash pointer, then transition dash transform, the duration of 300, and then transform dash style dash preserve dash 3D. Now this is a custom class that we're going to create. Now once we have that, then we want to check, so $sign curly brackets, we want to check if is flipping is true, and if that is true, then we want to say scale it down to 95, so if it is flipping. Otherwise, then we don't have any classes. And then $sign curly brackets, again, we want to check if show answer is true. If it is true, then rotate on the y-axis by 180, and otherwise simply have no class inside. Now inside this div, and you know what, this div should have an on click, so that when you click on this div, it calls the handle flip function, which we have just created above. Now inside this div, we're going to have another div which is going to show the front of the card. So div, this div is going to have some dynamic class names. So class name is equal to $sign curly bracket, so not $sign, but curly brackets and then backticks. So we're going to say absolute, and then insert dash 0, size dash full, backface dash hidden, and then bg white, rounded dash xl, shadow dash large, border, and then border gray dash 200, and then flex dash column, justify dash center, and then items dash center, padding all around of 8, and then you want to check, so $sign curly bracket, if show answer is true, then you want to apply rotate dash y dash 180. Otherwise, you don't want to have any classes, just like that. Now inside this div, we're going to have another div with a class name of text dash center, and then inside this div, we're going to have a paragraph with a class name of text dash sm, text dash amber dash 600, font dash medium, margin on the bottom of 2, uppercase, and then tracking dash wide, and then this is going to say question. Below this, we're going to have another paragraph, and this paragraph is going to have class names of text dash xl, font dash semi bold, text gray dash 800, and then leading dash relaxed. And the text here is going to say, so open up your curly brackets, card.front, because that's how we're going to be creating our flashcards. And then now we're going to go below this div, and we're going to create another div with a class name of absolute, and then bottom dash 4, and then text dash extra small, and text gray dash 400. And then inside this, we're going to say click to reveal answer. Now if you save that, then I'm going to have that. So you can see that this is a question that I created. This is the text. So if I click on this, it should flip, and you can see that it has flipped. And then now we can actually see our incorrect and correct buttons that we created. Fantastic. And you can see that when I click on it again, then it flips back because of this part that I've created somewhere right here. So this div really. So you can click on it and click on it. Now that we've created the front part of the card, we actually need to create this back part. So what we're going to do is we're going to go below these two divs. And let me see if I can copy some class names because I don't really feel like typing them all out again. So let's copy this div. So copy, and then let's paste it here and then close it out. Now this div is going to say absolute insert 0, size full, backface hidden, bg white, and this should say bg amber, that's 50, and then rounded xl, okay, and then shadow large, border gray 200. Now this should say border amber, that's 200, and then flex column, item center, justify center, and then padding around of 8, and then show answer is true, and this now should say not show answer. And you can do that, or you can simply go ahead and remove this class from here. So cut it out and then paste it here instead of having the not show answer. So saying if show answer is true, then apply no class names. If it is not true, then apply this class name. So that should be okay. Next, we're going to create a div, the class name of text as center. Inside this div, we're going to create a paragraph. And let me see if I can just copy this. So copy these two paragraphs, paste them here. And then the text right here is going to say answer. And then this is going to say card.back. So if I save that, then you have, okay, that's not good. It is because it is rotated here. So I think we should apply this class name somewhere. If we apply it here, then, okay. Okay. So it should be flipped. It should be flipped. Could it be because of the perspective 1200? Could it be? Wait a minute, there's no, it's called perspective distant. That's the name of the class, not 1200. Okay. So there's something I'm doing wrong, and I'm thinking it's because of a class name here. So let me just figure it out. Okay, so I figured out where it is going wrong. It is because we have not applied this class name. So what I've done is inside my index.css, I've pasted in that particular class. And now if I enable it, this is how it looks like. So this is the class name. And then we're saying that transform style is equal to preserve 3D. Now if we save that, then we should be able to, okay, so that's another issue. And I know where that is coming from. It's because when we are flipping it, we should still have the rotate class right here. So I was correct in suspecting this. So rotate Y 180, and then now there we go. So now we can have the question right here and then the answer. Fantastic. Which means that now if I go into the next, you can see that next is also working. So you can see that this is the next question 2 out of 2, and then cut 2 of 2, and then 100% complete. And then now when I click on this, then it gives me that as well. Fantastic. Now let's finish building this final part. So right below the paragraph and then below the div, we're going to create another div with a class name of absolute, and then bottom dash 4, text dash extra small, and then text gray dash 400. And the text is going to say, did you get it right? Question mark. Save that. And then now when you reveal the answer, then it should appear, well, that looks ugly, but perhaps we can make the answer smaller. I think we can make the answer smaller. So let's just say text base. And then we don't need font semi-bold here. I think we can remove it. Yeah, I think that's okay. I think that's okay. And I think this is a lot of margin. I think it's a lot of margin. Yeah, I think it's okay. It's okay. So now the next thing that we need to deal with is, I think let's just finish up our CSS. because the CSS is not a lot, it is very few lines. So first of all, on our universal selector here, we're going to say font-optical, optical sizing, set this into auto, and then font style is going to be normal, and this should be coming from Google Fonts. I think this is how they recommend it. If I think so, I might be wrong. And then the other thing that we need is the button here to just have a cursor of pointer, like so. So that now when you hover over buttons, then it's going to have a cursor of pointer, as you can see right there. Now, those are all the classes that we need in our CSS. You can see barely any CSS really. I mean, we do have a lot of CSS because we use a Tailwind, but there's pretty much none in our index.css. Now, next, let's go ahead and build our stats. We can deal with this component, and then the final component is going to be the flashcard form, which is the biggest component, so I'm doing it last. So for the stats, let's go ahead and begin to build it out. So let's close this and then Control P, search for stats, and then let's begin. So first of all, the stats takes in the flashcards as a prop. So we're going to destructure it, and then we're going to say const total cards is equal to flashcards.length, and then const reviewed cards is going to say flashcards.filter, and then for every card that we get back, then return the card.lastReviewed.length, like so, and then const total correct is equal to flashcards.reduce, and then passing the sum and then the card, and we're going to return sum plus card.correct count, like so, and then const total incorrect is equal to flashcards.reduce, once again passing the sum and then the card, and then we want to return the sum plus the card.incorrect count, and then const total attempts is equal to total correct plus total incorrect, which we're getting from above, and then const accuracy is equal to total attempts is greater than 0. So first check if there are any attempts, so check for the total attempts rather. If that is true, if that is true, then math.round, then passing total correct, divide it, so / by total attempts, and then multiply this by 100, and otherwise return 0. And then const categories is equal to, open up your array, pass in new set, and then pass in the flashcards.map, and then for every card that you get back, return the card.category, or if there is no category created, then return general, just like that. Now the reason for new set here is so that it returns only one item, instead of having, like, if you create cards that are in science, so instead of returning 3 instances of science, it's only going to return 1. Now we're going to have a function here called get category stats. This is going to take in the category as an argument. Open this up, and we're going to say const category cards is equal to flashcards.filter, and then for every card that we get back, then return the card, open this one first of all, so card.category or general, so that is if the category does not exist, and check if this is triple equal to the category that we're passing in as an argument. So that's how you know that they're in the same category. Now once you do that, then we're going to say const correct, because we need to get the number of correct questions in that category. We're going to say category cards dot reduce, pass in the sum and then the card, and we're going to return the sum plus card dot correct count, and then outside of this, 0, and I forgot to do the same thing for where we have the sum. So outside of this, 0, and then right here as well, 0. And the reason why this 0 is important is because it acts as the initial value. So the initial value is always going to be 0, so that when you're adding the items, then it starts from nothing, so that you don't have like the initial value being 100 and then you have like 110 incorrect when you only have 2 questions, you know. Now once you have the correct here, we want to get the incorrect. This is going to be very similar to what we have above, so category cards dot reduce, and then pass in the sum and the card, and we're going to return the sum plus card dot incorrect count comma 0, so initial value, and then const total is equal to correct plus incorrect, and then const category accuracy is equal to check for the total. If it is greater than 0, if that is true, then math dot round, pass in the correct divided by the total times 100, and otherwise return 0. And then finally, for our return for this, we're going to go ahead and return an object. So we're going to return the cards as category cards dot length. We're going to return the attempts as the total. We're going to return the accuracy as category accuracy, just like that. Now once we have that, then we need to create another function here called get recent activity. This is not going to have any arguments, but we're simply going to say const today is equal to new date, and then const 3 days ago, so it's showing recent activity from 3 days ago. Pass in new date, and then pass in today, and then 3 days ago dot set date, and then we're going to go ahead and say today dot get date, like so, then -3 to get it 3 days ago, and then I'm going to say return flashcards dot filter, and then we want to filter the card like so, and then we want to turn the card dot last reviewed is true, and new date, and then passing the card dot last reviewed is greater than or equal to 3 days ago, like so, and then outside of this get the length. So that's how you get the recent cards. And then below this, we want to check if total cards is triple equal to 0. If that is true, then we're going to go ahead and return something inside here. And we did something if similar in the flashcard text, so I want to copy it. So we have an if statement somewhere. Where is it? Here. So let's copy this return. And you know what? I'm thinking probably it's better if we place this somewhere on the bottom, because I think it's better in terms of how you're viewing everything. So we start with the state values, and then this, and then the functions, and then our fallback just in case. So let's copy this div. Let's paste it here. So now instead of book open, we want the target icon from Lucid React, which I have auto imported right there. We don't need this import. So import target from Lucid React. And the way to auto import is just click at the end of the word, control spacebar, and then choose the import that you want. And then when you say enter or tab, it is going to auto import it for you. Now the H2 is going to say no study data yet. And then the paragraph is going to say create some flashcards and start studying to see the progress. And then now if we save that, we should see something, but we don't see anything because we can negate this. And then now, really? Is it because I already have some cards? I think it's because I already have some cards. But you should be able to test this out. I already know how it looks like, or how it should look like rather. But you can see that now we need to begin to build out our return. So I'm going to turn a div here with a class name of space on the y of 8. Inside this div, we're going to turn another div, and then we're going to have an h2 with a class name of text-2xl, font-bold, text gray -900, and then margin on the bottom of 6. The text is going to say study statistics. Below the h2, we're going to have a div, the class name of grade, and then grade columns dash 1. On medium screens and above, grade columns dash 2. On large screens and above, grade columns dash 4, and then gap dash 6, and then margin on the bottom of 8. Inside this div, we're going to have another div with the class name of bg-white, padding all around of 6, rounded-xl, and then shadow-sm, border and border-gray-200. And then inside this, we're going to have a div, and then inside this div, we're going to have a paragraph with a class name of text-sm and text-gray-600 and margin on the bottom of 1. This is going to say total cards. Below this paragraph, we're going to have another paragraph with the class name of text-2xl, and then font-bold, and text-gray-900, and the text is going to say total cards. Now, if we save that, then you should see some statistics, as you can see. Now, what we're going to do is copy this div that has bg-white, so copy, paste down 1, 2, and 3. Now, this second one is going to say cards reviewed, so cards reviewed, and then the paragraph below this is going to say reviewed cards, and then next we have accuracy, and then this is going to say accuracy, and then outside of this we want to have the percent sign, and then the final one here is going to say recent activity, and then this is now going to say get recent activity function, so remember to call it. And now if we save that, then you should see that. Fantastic. Now next we need to find the div, the closing div for this div of grade. You can shrink this down so it ends here. So we're going to go below it, and now I want to check for total attempts. So if total attempts is greater than 0 is true, then we're going to return a div here. Close it out. This div is going to have a class name of bg-white, rounded-xl, and border-gray-200, padding all round of 6, and then margin on the bottom of 8. Inside this div, we're going to have an h3 with the class name of text-large, font-semi-bold, text-gray-900, and then margin on the bottom of 4. Inside the h3, we're going to say performance overview. Now below the h3, we're going to have another div with the class name of space on the y of 4, and then inside this we're going to have a div, and then inside this div we're going to have another div with the class name of flex and justified just between, and then text dash extra small, dash sm, text gray-600, and then margin on the bottom of 2. Inside this we're going to have a span that says correct answers. Below this span we're going to have another span which is going to say total correct, and then outside of this / total attempts. So total correct over the total attempts. So if you save that, you can see correct answers is right there. Now below this span and then below the div, we're going to have another div with the class name of width-full, and then bg-gray-200, and rounded-full, and then height-3. Inside this, we're going to have another div. This div is going to have some class names here. So bg-green-500, rounded-full, and then height-3, transition-all, with a duration of 500. And then just like we did in the other one, the style for this is going to be calling the width, and then open up a backticks and then $ curly bracket. We're going to pass in the total correct divided by the total attempts, and then multiply this by 100, and then outside of this show the percentage sign. Now this should be a self-closing div, but you can have it as self-closing, or you can just have nothing inside it. It's just going to show that the progress bar. Now below this div, So below this div and then below two divs, we're going to go ahead and create another div. And then inside this, we're going to create another div with the class name of flex, justified as between. And you know what? It's just the same class names as what we have above. Where is it? It should be the same as this div, I hope. So let's go ahead and let's risk it. Let's copy this entire div, copy, and paste it here. Oops. Paste it correctly, paste it here. Now this is going to say incorrect answers, incorrect answers. So that therefore means that this is going to show total incorrect. So highlight this and then Control D to select the next one, so that you can just change it once. So total incorrect divided by the total attempts, and that should be okay, except that this should now say BG red, that's 500. So that if you save that, then you have that, so incorrect answers. And then we're going to go right below this, and now we want to show the categories, so the breakdown of the categories. So we're going to check for the categories.length. If it is greater than 0, and only when that is true, that's when we want to have a div here. This is going to have a class name of bg-white, bg-white, rounded-xl, and then border-gray-200, padding on round of 6. Inside this, we're going to have an h3, the class name of text-large, font-semi-bold, text gray-900, and then margin on the bottom of 4. The h3 is going to say category breakdown. Below the h3, we're going to have a div with a class name of space on the y of 4. And then inside this, we want to map over our categories. So categories.map. And then for every category that we get back, we're going to open up our curly brackets. So curly brackets, because we want to get the stats. So const stats is equal to get category stats, which is the function that we have on top, and then pass in the category. And then we can have our return, and we're going to return a div with the key of category. And then the class name for this is going to say border-bottom, border-bottom, really, border-bottom, border gray-100. And then the last item is going to have border-bottom-0. So the last item is not going to have a border. And then padding on the bottom of 4. And then for the last item, padding on the bottom of 0. So the last item is not going to have a padding. You can close this out. Now inside this div, we're going to have another div with a class name of flex, and the items as center, and justify dash between, and then margin at the bottom of 2. Inside this, we're going to have an h4 with a class name of font dash medium, and text gray-900, and the h4 is going to say category. And I think, let me make this full screen, it's more visible. Let me also zoom in a bit. Now below the h4, we're going to have a span with a class name of text-sm and text gray-600. And the span, it's going to say stats.cards, cards. If we save that, we're going to have, there we go. So the category called programming has one card, and this should say one card. So let's change up the grammar just a bit. So we can go ahead and do this. We can say if stats.cards is triple equal to 1 is true, then you want to return card. Otherwise, we want to return cards. So save that. So it's going to say one card, and then when you have another card in the programming category, it's going to say 2 cards. So just being grammatically correct. Now below the span and then below this div, we're going to go ahead and open up our curly brackets, and we're going to say stats.attempts is greater than 0 is true, and only when that is true, then we're going to have a div here, close it out, and this should have a t. So this is going to have a class name of flex and justify dash between, and then text dash sm and text gray dash 600. Inside this div, we're going to have a span, and this span is going to say, come on, span is going to say stats.attempts, and then the same logic from above, we're going to say start.attempts is triple equal to 1. If that is true, then we're going to say 1 attempt. Otherwise, we're going to say attempts. Now, below this span, we're going to have another span. This is going to have a class name here, and it is going to be dynamic. So curly brackets and then backticks, font dash medium, and then $ curly bracket. We're going to say stats.accuracy. Accuracy is greater than or equal to 80. If that is true, then we're going to say text green dash 600. Otherwise, we want to check if stats.accuracy is greater than or equal to 60. If that is true, then I'm going to say text dash amber dash 600. And then otherwise, meaning it is less than 60, we're going to say text red dash 600, which means you need to study some more. Now, inside the span, we're going to show the stats.accuracy and then percent accuracy. So we're going to say like 80% accuracy. So if you save that, then we're going to show that. Fantastic. And that should be our entire stats component complete. So I'm in the flashcard form component, and what we're going to do is import use state from React. We are also going to import the save icon from Lucid React and the X icon as well. And then remember that the flashcard form takes in the on submit. It also takes in the on cancel, and then the initial data, and then is editing. And with that, we can begin to build out our application. So first of all, we need our state value. So const front and set front, meaning the front of the card. This is going to be equal to use state. By default, we're going to pass in the initial data (front), meaning we want to check if it exists from local storage first, and then if it doesn't exist, then return an empty string. And then const back and set back, meaning the back of the card. This is equal to use state. And then by default, initial data, first of all, dot back, otherwise return an empty string. And then const category and set category is equal to use state, pass in initial data, (category), otherwise return an empty string. Now, once you have that, then we're going to create our handle submit function here, which is going to take in the event handler of E, and we're going to leave it as empty for now so that we can build out our return. So we're going to turn a div here with a class name of maxwidth-2xl and then mxauto. And then inside this div, we're going to have another div with a class name of bg-white rounded-xl border, and then border-gray-200, and then padding all around of 8. Inside this div, we're going to have another div with a class name of flex and items-center and justify-between, and then margin at the bottom of 6. And then inside this, we're going to have an h2 with a class name of text-2xl, and then font-bold and text gray-900. And then the h2 is going to be checking for if is editing is true, and if it is true, if it is true, then the text is going to say edit flashcard. Otherwise, we're going to say create new flashcard. Now below the h2, we're going to have a button. This button is going to have an on click, which is going to call the on cancel function. And then the class name for this is going to say padding on round of 2, text gray-400, and then on hover, text gray-600, and then on hover again, bg gray-100, and then rounded-large, and transition-colors. Inside the button, we are now going to show the X icon with the class name of size-5 and close it out. Now below the button and then below this div, we're now going to have our form here, which is going to be calling the on submit, and we're going to call the handle submit function, which you have not yet created. And then the class name for this is going to say space on the y of 6, close it out. And then we're going to have a div, and then inside this div, we're going to have a label, a label, and the label is going to have an HTML4, and this is going to be linking to the category, and the class name for this really class name is going to say block and text-sm and font-medium text gray-700 and then margin bottom of 2, and then the text is going to say category, and in brackets is going to be optional. Now below the category, below the label, we're going to have an input with a type of text, and then the value for this, the value for this is going to say category. ID is going to be linking to the category so that it links with the label. And then the onChange, probably I should put the ID first before the value. And then the onChange for this, we're going to call in our event of E, and we're going to say set category into e.target value so that we can capture anyone to type in. And then the class name is going to say width-full, padding on the X of 4, padding on the Y of 3, and then border dash gray dash 300, rounded dash large, and then on focus we're going to say ring dash 2, and then on focus we're going to say ring dash amber dash 500, and then on focus we're going to say border dash amber dash 500, then transition dash colors, and then the placeholder for this is going to say e.g. maths, science, history, geography, and all the other categories that you can think of, and then close out the input. Now we're going to go below this div, and let's actually copy the label as well. And by the way, let's just save it so that it formats correctly. It formats better rather, and we can copy this entire div, which ends here. So copy, paste it down, and now this one is going to say HTML4 front, and then the class names are going to remain the same. Now this part is going to say question slash font of card, and then with an asterisk, meaning it is going to be required. Now this is not going to be an input, it's going to be a text area, and the ID for this is going to say front, and onChange we're going to say, first of all, the value is going to say front, and then onChange we're going to say set front into e.target value, and the class name should be relatively the same, except we need to add resize dash none so that you cannot resize the input. And then the placeholder is going to say enter the question for the front of the flashcard, and then set it to required as well. And then let's copy this div one more time, copy, paste it here. Now this is going to be linking to back, and this is now going to say answer slash back of card, and then let's just copy this and paste it here and here, and then this is going to say set back, and this is going to say enter the answer for the back of the flashcard, and then it is also going to be required. And then below this div we need our submit and cancel buttons, so we're going to create a div with a class name of flex and flex dash column and items dash center, justify dash center, and then give it a gap of 4, and then padding on the top of 4, and then on small screens and above we're going to say flex dash row, and then on small screens and above we're going to say justify dash end. So inside this we're going to have a button with a type of button, because this is going to be our cancel button. So on click we're going to call on cancel, and then the class name for this is going to say padding on the X of 6, padding on the Y of 3, width dash full, text gray dash 700, bg gray dash 100, and then rounded dash large, and then on hover bg gray dash 200, transition dash colors, and then font dash medium, and then on small screens at the above with dash auto, and then the text is going to say cancel. And then we're going to have another button here, which you can just copy this, so copy, paste it here. Now this is going to be a type of submit so that it triggers the submit event on the form. And that therefore means that you don't need the on click on this button, but the class names are going to be slightly different. So we're going to say flex and then items.center. Oops, what am I typing? Items.center and then space on the x of 2 and then padding on the x of 6, padding of 3, width 4, and then this is going to say text white, and then bg amber dash 600, and then on hover we're going to say bg amber dash 700, and then transition colors, font medium, and sm with auto. Now inside here we're going to show the save icon with a class name of size-4. Close it out. Below this we're going to have a span which is going to check if is editing is true, and we're going to say update. Otherwise we're going to say create, and then outside of this we're going to say flashcard. So update flashcard or create flashcard. Now once we have that, we can save that, and that is our form looking fantastic. So we can create a category here. So let's say physics, and then we can do something like explain Bernoulli's principle, and then let me copy this, search it on Google, and really I can just copy this part, but it already opened. Okay, so let's just copy this, copy and paste it here as the answer, create flashcard, and ooh, oh, we have not created our submit function. Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Let's go ahead and do it. So right here, we're going to say e.prevent default. And then we want to check if front.trim, because front here is accepting some kind of string. So we can trim it to remove any extra spaces at the end. So if front.trim and back.trim, so if they both exist, then we're going to call the on submit, which is one of the props that we're destructuring, and we're going to go ahead and call it as follows. So we're going to pass in front as front.trim to remove any extra spaces, and the back is going to say back.trim to remove any extra spaces once again, and then the category is going to say category, guess it, dot trim, and if you don't pass in any category, then we're going to set it into the general category like so. And then if we want to check not is editing, then we're going to say set front back to an empty string, set back to an empty string, and then set category to an empty string, just like that. So save that, and then now you can see that this is our empty state. But now if I create a new card and paste that back in, and then explain Bernoulli's principle, and then the category here is going to say physics, and then create flashcard, then you can see we have a new flashcard created. Now I can click on this, we can see the answer, and then if I mark it as correct, then it is going to give me this in the statistics. Fantastic. And by the way, we already added local storage, so if you reload this, it's not reloading from local storage. Undefined is not valid JSON. What did I do? So it says in storage line 6. There's nothing I've changed, right? Let's check local storage. This is showing undefined. It should not be undefined, it should be wait, what? Okay, so I figured out why we're getting this issue. It's because in our app.jsx, where we are calling save flashcards, remember that in storage, save flashcards takes in flashcards as a prop, but when we're calling it, we're not passing any argument. Oh, I've said prop, I meant argument. So we need to pass in the flashcards as an argument. So if I save that, then when reloaded, it's still going to crash because undefined has already been stored in local storage. So we can say local storage dot remove item and then remove the item called, what is it called? Flashcards? Flashcards underscore cards. What do I call it? I don't want to open local storage because, you know, there are things saved there. So flashcard cards. So this is so annoying. So let's just open this up. And then let's just delete this. And then shift F5 to reload it. And let's test out whether it's going to work. So just having some dummy things, create, and then reload. Okay, so now it is being stored in local storage. Fantastic. Fantastic. And then now let's test out our delete. There we go. So delete is also working, which means that now this is the empty state for our stats. And then you can also add new flashcards as well. Fantastic. So that is going to be it from me. And if you want access to this code that I've just written, then you can go ahead and check the link to the GitHub repository, which is going to be in the description. And before you leave, I ask that you support the channel by leaving a like or sharing the video any way you can, because it really helps me out a lot. I have quite a huge target for this year. I want to go ahead and reach 1 million subscribers. And probably we're not going to hit that, but it's a huge goal. So if we achieve it, it's going to be phenomenal. And that is it from me. And I will see you in the next one.